Today we're going to talk about Mozilla VPN and why you shouldn't buy it. First of all, what is Mozilla VPN? Well, it's pretty much right there in the name. It's a VPN service that is provided by Mozilla, the same company that is behind some really nice free software like Firefox and Thunderbird. Except that this VPN service isn't really provided by Mozilla. It's really provided by Mullvad VPN. It's actually their servers and their network that you're going to be using. And Mozilla is simply a reseller for the VPN service. Now, Mozilla is fairly transparent about this, which is pretty good, considering that there's actually a lot of VPN resellers these days. In fact, there's more VPN resellers than there are companies that actually have the infrastructure to create a VPN service. But these resellers, they don't usually identify themselves as resellers, so good on Mozilla for that. But I typically don't recommend buying a VPN service from a reseller anyway, for a couple of reasons. Number one is you're probably not going to get the same level of technical support from the reseller that you would get if you paid for the service directly from the VPN provider. The reseller is just a middleman in most cases, and if they aren't able to provide any additional value than what you pay for the service from them, then you might as well just get it straight from the source. Like, let's say that you have some type of issue with your VPN and it's not like most technical issues, which is just you're doing it wrong. There's like an actual problem. There's no way that Mozilla is really going to be able to fix that unless it's just a problem with like their software that they've added around it. But if there's actually a problem with Mullvad's network, Mozilla can't fix that. Only Movad is going to be able to fix that. So if you tell Mozilla about the problem, all they're going to do is just put in some type of a trouble ticket, some type of a support ticket for Movad to fix. And the second problem, which is actually a really big deal in this specific case, is that if you sign up for a VPN service through a reseller, you're going to end up giving them your personal details. You're going to give it to the reseller, and they might also have to give those details to the VPN provider in order to create an account for you. So you're basically exposing personal details to an additional party, again, with no real gain for yourself. Now, the reason that this is such a big deal is that if we go to Mullvad.net, if we go directly to the provider of this service and we look at how to create an account, you can see that they don't actually require any of your personal details to use their service. They've set it up in such a way where you don't need to give an email or a username or a password for authentication. Instead, Movad just uses this randomly generated account number, and you can also pay for their service anonymously. Like, you can pay for it with cash, and I think this is pretty much the only VPN service, or at least it's the only one that I'm aware of that accepts cash payments, because obviously cash will be anonymous. They also accept like Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash, but obviously you have to go through some special precautions in order to try and use Bitcoin or pretty much any cryptocurrency besides privacy coins anonymously. But you can't do any of this anonymous setup when you go to sign up for Mozilla's repacked version. Like, if we go to this link here, get Mozilla VPN, boom, you're automatically brought to this page where they want you to provide an email. And if you look closely at what's mentioned down here, where they're talking about some other Mozilla services like Firefox Monitor and Firefox Lockwise, and if we take a look at the URL that we're on, accounts.firefox.com, this is actually the page where you would go and create a Firefox account or a Mozilla account, whatever they call it. So yeah, this is going to have your personal information tied to the account. You're probably going to have to be logged into the browser as well, which could potentially tie some of that information to your account. Now, of course, Mozilla promises not to do anything sketchy with your data, not to spy on you or anything like that. And Mozilla as a company has kind of set themselves up as being very privacy focused. However, as a general rule of thumb, I think it's better to set up your relationship with these different companies so that they don't even have the opportunity to really do anything spooky, rather than just trusting that they won't do anything spooky with your data or try to change things around so that they actually do start collecting data on you. I mean, just look at what happened with Google, where they promised not to be evil, and now Google is practically hosting the NWO meetings. And it's also not like Firefox is giving you, or Mozilla is giving you, any type of big discount. I think it's mentioned somewhere on here. Yeah, so they're charging you $4.99 a month to use Mozilla VPN. And then if we take a look over at Movad, it's $5.50 a month. So it's literally a 50-cent discount that you're paying to kind of defeat the whole purpose of using Mullvad, which is giving up your personal details. Because here's the thing about Mullvad, right? It's a good company, it's a good service, and I would recommend it to anybody that wants to get a VPN that can actually, like, if they actually want to use a VPN for the purposes of enhancing privacy and anonymity, which generally I wouldn't recommend a VPN for, because it doesn't actually do that, despite what you hear YouTubers and people shilling VPN saying. But Mullvad is literally the only mainstream VPN that even can do that. And I've explained why in my VPN videos, but basically all other VPNs require some personal information for you to use the service. So they definitely can't be anonymous. Like, imagine if every time you fired up the Tor browser, you had to give your real name and phone number. That would obviously defeat the whole purpose of using Tor. And VPNs, they might not be as private depending on how you use them. Let's say, for example, well, let's say that you actually use a VPN the way that it's advertised, right? Which is use it on all of your devices and, use it when you're at the airport and blah, blah, blah. If you do that, you're literally going to be giving the VPN provider more network information, more browsing information than your ISP has, because when you use your cell phone, for example, you're connected to a cellular network. So if that's not the same as, like, if you're not using Verizon for both cell phone and internet, then Verizon's not aware of whatever your cellular data is, or vice versa if you have a different internet company. If you take your laptop with you on vacation and you're accessing the internet through the hotel's Wi-Fi or at the airport or whatever, again, your ISP doesn't have access to that information. They can't see what you're browsing because you're not browsing on your network. But if you're connecting through a VPN, then all of that stuff is always going to be going through the VPN provider's network. And again, you're basically put in a position where you just have to trust them to not do anything spooky with your data. So yeah, for privacy and anonymity, Mullvad is top tier because they actually go through some steps to try and make your service be as anonymous as possible. But for other things like bandwidth or the number of servers available, which also means the number of different IPs that you could change to, ease of use and cost, there are other VPN services that do that stuff better. Again, Movad is what I recommend, but if you absolutely don't care about like your privacy or anything like that, then you might actually be better off with something like NordVPN. And no, I'm not sponsored by Nord. This is just the straight up honest truth. Their service is, I think their service is still cheaper if you were to sign up for 3 years, because with Movad, you just pay month to month. They have more servers than Movad. They're generally faster than Movad, and they sort of have like dedicated support for for using a VPN with Netflix, which is the only thing that I've really heard normies using VPNs for. Is like there's certain content, and I guess all the streaming services do this, but there's certain content that, like, if you use Netflix in America, you won't have access to stuff that's like Netflix UK or Netflix Canada. So people will use this, like normal people will use VPNs for this kind of stuff. Now, you could probably do this with Movad as well, but the fact that Nord actually has a support page that specifically walks you through how to do it means that it's going to be easier for people that are not super tech savvy. So you might be wondering at this point, Why is Mozilla even getting into the VPN business? It's because they want to make money. And there's nothing wrong with that. You know, I'm literally making monetized videos on YouTube, so I definitely can't criticize. And considering that the vast majority of Mozilla's funding right now comes from Google, I would actually appreciate them trying to make some money besides just basically being Google's little sugar baby. But as far as like giving Mozilla money to try and support them, like if that's your goal, if that's what you want to do, I wouldn't sign up for the VPN service. Like if you want to support Mozilla, just donate money to them instead of paying for a gimped version of Mullvad VPN.